2024 is gonna be Bethesda's big year. Trust me, bro, it's gonna be amazing. And you know what? I actually 100% agree. 2024 is gonna be Bethesda's year to fail even harder than they did with Starfield. It is gonna be an amazing ride.
There's a pretty good chance we start to see and maybe even play the Oblivion remaster in 2024. And the story behind this one is pretty insane in its own right. In July of 2023, a random user took to Reddit to supposedly leak several projects coming from Virtuous Games.
You know what's my favorite part about the idea of Oblivion Remastered? I love it, by the way. I absolutely love it. First of all, I do think that Bethesda is such a decrepit, absolutely useless gaming studio that they will just start doing remasters. That's the number one thing. And second of all, well, we already know how remasters pan out. World of Warcraft, but Warcraft 3 Reforged. Absolutely amazing. 10 out of 10, obviously. Everyone loved it. Yeah, obviously. Diablo 2 Remastered. Oh my god, everyone loved that also. Well, actually, Diablo 2 Remastered, unironically, didn't fail completely, but it was hugely, hugely underwhelming. And, well, World of Warcraft Classic, well, it's not really a remaster now, is it? They just literally took the game that existed and just resold it, and it did better than the current versions of the game. So that's already a great standard for remasters, that they completely fail on average. And the thing is about Bethesda, man, there's going to be two types of people. The ones that have really good memories and fond memories of playing Morrowind and, you know, Oblivion and all of that jazz. But the reality is this, okay? I played Morrowind when I was a kid. But the moment I stopped playing it as a kid, I had never once even thought about reinstalling it and playing it again. Why? Because those games do not age. Those games were fond memories when we were kids, but for the majority of people, now, and I'm saying for the majority, there are going to be people who say, oh, I like replaying this game. Yes, and those people on average also have not bought a single new game in the last 5 years, so, you know, I don't know if they honestly matter in this conversation. Yeah, there are a couple of people who are gonna like Oblivion Remastered, but the majority are gonna hate it. The majority are absolutely gonna hate it, and this will destroy Oblivion's and Morrowind's reputation as timeless classics. Because again, everyone remembers how cool it was playing it as a kid, but no one replays them. Very, very, very few people in Bethesda fanboys replay these games, because the reality is they're just bad. Without changes, Oblivion will not work. Think about it. The combat system for Morrowind and Oblivion is you swing your sword as fast as possible, and then invisible dice get rolled to see if a hit lands. A system like that will literally never pass in the modern day age. It's not gonna work. People are gonna unanimously hate it en masse. There is absolutely no shot. And that means, well, either Bethesda is smart enough to understand that that's gonna happen, or Bethesda is obviously not smart enough to know that it's gonna happen. And if Bethesda doesn't change anything, well, it's dead on arrival. If Bethesda tries to change things, well, Bethesda probably is gonna make it unironically worse in some magic way. Okay? It's gonna be a disaster. It is gonna Oblivion Remastered, I would say 9 times out of 10 is gonna be a disaster.
Virtuous Games is a giant studio that basically helps other developers make their games. Reportedly, one project underway at the Paris branch of Virtuous was Alter. This is going to be a remaster/remake of Oblivion. The discussion for it being a full remake are still ongoing. It is done currently using a pairing system, so it means that the remaster is running using both a UE5 project and the old Oblivion one. For instance, new graphics are rendered in the UE5 project, but most of the gameplay, physics, etc. is still done in Oblivion.
Yes, we already heard it. Again, there is no way Oblivion has withstood the test of time. Absolutely no way.
Be released end of next year/early 25, depending mostly on if it's a remake or remaster. So now, first glance, a lot of users saw this new dual engine system mentioned and thought, whoa, no, that is just ridiculous. But other remakes have been taking advantage of such a system, like Shadow of the Colossus. And using two engines to remake a game like Oblivion can be incredibly powerful. Oblivion would basically use UE5 for the visuals and other modernizations. Some fans of the games have already recreated aspects of Oblivion in Unreal Engine 5, and you could just easily see how much better things look here. But underneath that visual upgrade, it'll be the original Gamebryo engine. So as you play, things will feel remarkably similar to Oblivion despite looking way better. And then from there, the developers can selectively pick which features to remake in Unreal Engine 5 versus which to leave in the older state on Gamebryo. So this actually makes a lot more sense than you may think. But over time, this leak got increasingly more interesting. This user ended up deleting their account almost immediately, but first provided proof to moderators of the Gaming Leak subreddit, who said this person's identity has been verified with us, specifically their claim of being an ex-employee of Virtuous. And at the time, I reached out to the moderators of this subreddit who confirmed that they received identifying information that was able to be paired with online information to make it seem very likely that this user could have known this information about the Oblivion remake.
Wait, that's a literal dinosaur?
And even Nate Drake, another insider who has correctly leaked several things like the recent Persona 3 remake on Xbox, backed up this leak saying they heard an Oblivion remaster.
Okay, listen, remaking Persona is completely different than remaking some kind of Bethesda trash, okay? Persona remakes, legit.
Was being shopped around but weren't sure where it landed. So as a result of all of that, an outlandish leak being posted, but then over time it becoming more and more plausible, this little Reddit post ended up getting a ton of coverage in the media. But just a few short months later, things would be upgraded to an even new level, as Xbox effectively confirmed this leak with an additional leak of their own. Microsoft accidentally uploaded a ton of internal and private documents while trying to upload a Phil Spencer deposition during the FTC trial earlier this year. One such document that was accidentally uploaded was this Bethesda roadmap. This was made in July of 2020 while Bethesda and Microsoft were negotiating the Bethesda buyout. And on this roadmap from Bethesda, we could see an Oblivion remaster listed as...
Yeah, but we all know that this roadmap is probably something that Todd Howard cooked up in 5 minutes before everything started, because do you believe that Bethesda has a roadmap? Do you really believe that Bethesda cares enough to make a roadmap or long-term goals? I don't.
One of their plans, and actually at this point it would be relatively near release. So this all could be one gigantic coincidence, but to me it seems incredibly likely that this leak was real, as we're now seeing sources from both 2023 and 2020 about some kind of Oblivion remaster or remake coming. And where this all becomes particularly relevant for this video is the...
By the way, I love the person who said, oh yeah, look at that, Skyrim added guns, that's crazy, that's so cool. Literally a reskin crossbow. Unironically, literally a reskin crossbow. Oh, and also, by the way, I just want to mention how absolutely trash Skyrim is lore-wise. The world is probably, honestly... Dude, I'm looking into a little bit more deeper in these Bethesda games, but man, the world of Skyrim is probably one of the poorest made worlds in existence. It is just as poor as it gets. People have you get thrown into jail. That jail does not account for, well, you know, the fact that you can burn people with fire, that even children can do that because anyone can learn these novice spells. It doesn't account for the fact that you can summon ethereal weapons out of thin air and, you know, cut people and whatnot. The economy is based on gold, you know, a pretty commonly available spell that you can transmute anything into gold. Dude, the world of Skyrim is probably one of the unironically most poorly made worlds ever. It is just absolutely sad when you look into it deep. Now, as a game, it technically works. No one thinks about that while playing. But man, when you stop and think about the world of Skyrim, holy moly does it actually just fall off a cliff. It is one of the worst made worlds in existence. No questions.
the timing. In that original leaked post, it was described how this remaster was slated for late 2024 or early 2025. And if you look at this release schedule, that lines up super well. As I mentioned before, this roadmap was made in July of 2020. Of course, the pandemic led to tons of delays for a lot of these projects, but what you will still notice is all of the content from fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21 is now released, with Starfield being the last major holdout. And we already have heard how we're going to be hearing more about Indiana Jones later this year, as well as the Starfield DLC, and then sitting just in between those is the Oblivion Remaster. So it seems like the Oblivion Remaster will be ripe for an announcement or even potential release in 2024, based not only on some random Reddit leaks that were later backed up, but also Bethesda's own roadmap, assuming they actually stuck to these timelines. And frankly, I could see this being one of the giant reveals at the Xbox Summer Showcase, and even if the remaster or remake gets pushed until 2025, if it's in the first half of next year, I could still see it getting revealed this summer. So there's a pretty good chance we play a actual remaster from Bethesda in 2024, and not like one of those haphazard remasters, but a real one. And this will definitely be one of those things to keep an eye on even at a macro level. Bethesda also had plans for a Fallout 3 remaster later on in their roadmap, and I imagine the performance of this
Dude, Fallout 3 remaster is... Fallout 3 is pretty weak. You know, most people played it, but it's like... I'm never replaying Fallout 3. I'm replaying New Vegas or Fallout 4. Fallout 3 was not as strong as some people wish it was. Fallout 3 was forgettable and puke green bland.
Oblivion Remaster will have a large impact on how they handle these things going forward. If the Oblivion Remaster just ends up selling ridiculous amounts of copies and makes them a ton of money, you have to imagine they'll start popping these things out quite a bit more frequently. And the recent addition of paid mods to Skyrim, and likely coming to Starfield in not that long, could be an interesting X factor here. Adding this creation system to something like an Oblivion or Fallout 3 Remaster...
By the way, just one more reminder. Called it. Absolutely called it. I told you at the start there is no world where Starfield stays free to play. No, of course not.
Adds in a serious avenue for new revenue generation. You can make a lot of money selling paid mods for your older games that just never got to the same level of modability as some of the more modern ones. Now, I'm not saying I would personally like to see that done, but from a business and financial perspective, you have to imagine Xbox and Bethesda are considering that. But speaking of, I could also see this paid mod system having some interesting impacts on Skyrim in 2024. Like potentially even getting some of you to give Skyrim another go. As of right now, we haven't seen any new paid mods release outside of that initial batch. But Bethesda seemingly has received tons of applications to this program, and they have mentioned how things will begin gradually, but over time, waves of new verified creators, as they are known, will be added to the program. And even further, Bethesda has described that they'll be even updated.
By the way, fun fact, did you know that in what's it called? This game, dragons are not mindless, stupid brute savages? Yeah, you could have honestly fooled me the way the dragons act and absolutely do nothing. Yeah, you could have fooled me, Bethesda.
Updating and creating new tools for this like a Blender exporter. So when it comes to creations, it feels like this weird scenario where Bethesda almost just kind of dumped it out before the holiday. Further updates to the program have been slow, but they still do have grand plans for all of this in 2024. I don't think it's
grand opening, grand closing. There's a song about that.
Going to be this year where we really get to see what's possible here. Some mod authors like Kingath plan on creating full-fledged experiences for Skyrim using this system, and as the program adds more and more new mod authors, they may create larger and larger additions to creations. So could we actually see a point in 2024 where there are paid mods releasing for Skyrim that are actually worth the money? Obviously, we have no idea, but it's just another one of those things that I feel like a lot of people saw, had a reaction to, and immediately forgot about, but I really do believe that the biggest releases are still on the horizon. There have been rumblings of some very prominent mod authors actually collaborating to create some larger projects to release via this, but a lot of that is just based off how much actual interest there is. These mod authors start making pretty good to even great money using this, I imagine we're going to see a lot more big content for it. But of course, this is almost certainly coming to Starfield as well. To end off 2023, Bethesda shared an end-of-year update around Starfield and their plans for 2024. They describe how new updates will be dropping for Starfield about every 6 weeks, with the first major update coming in.
I can't wait for these amazing 10 out of 10 updates. Bro, if you're expecting anything but trash, I don't know what's wrong with you, okay? Yeah, 6 weeks for an eat button sounds legit. 6 weeks for field of view slider sounds legit. But now what is gonna Bethesda do now for the updates? They probably don't have any easy updates to introduce in 6 weeks. They're gonna run out of updates because God knows they're not gonna fix the bugs.
In February. And for their 2024 plans, they describe adding things like city maps, so hopefully we'll get these uninformative, crude maps replaced.
Oh yeah, city maps, right, I forgot about that. Maybe Bethesda can do that in like half a year. Maybe city maps, can you imagine? Wow, what a time to be alive.
There's going to be new ways to travel, which definitely sounds hopeful. I expect them to add some type of new jetpack that'll make navigating across planets far quicker and easier. New ways to customize your ship, with them specifically mentioning things like ship decorations, new ship building options, and more. So likely giving you the ability to properly place around some junk and just cosmetic.
Imagine that, adding ship decorations to something that you want to spend the least time in game because it's the worst mechanic of the game. Oh yeah, Bethesda, you're hitting that right out of the park, my boys. Ship decorations, yeah. Might as well just add planetary decorations or something like that. It doesn't make a difference. No one's gonna see it. No one's gonna want to see it.
Additions on your spaceship, but also likely a variety of the other parts you could find in-game. There's been quite a few mods actually implementing these, and even some mods adding in full-on space station customizability. New gameplay options to further adjust difficulty, but it sounds like as opposed to just being a straightforward hardcore or greater difficulty mode, it'll give you further degrees of customization over the difficulty of the game, with them describing easy ways to customize carrying capacity, cargo access distance, ship damage, vendor credits, how you suffer afflictions, new survival mechanics, and more. So as opposed to a new difficulty option, it's almost like you'll be able to create your own difficulty for the game, leaning more into survival or easier mechanics depending on what you'd like to play. And this too would be a great addition to the game and give food a more functional usage. But the last two things are
How about separating the food from the aid department, though? How about we start with that? How about we ignore making food useful, and we make it that the random garbage is not in music with everything that's useful? How about we separate food from the healing items so you don't have to scroll through 500 different things because, only 3 of them are useful? God, Bethesda's so garbage. Like, it took them such a long time to figure out that food is probably not the same as aid. But nah, Bethesda's just 200 steps backwards. 0 steps forward, 200 steps backwards.
Definitely the biggest, with official mod support with the launch of Creations and the first story expansion with Shattered Space. So to fairly keep expectations in check, these are their plans for all—
I honestly cannot wait to see how absolutely a first grade level is gonna be the new dialogue for the expansion. I cannot wait to see that so Bethesda has this inept writer that has been there for 20 years and butchering every storyline he touches and making it into absolute garbage. And this guy is the main writer for Starfield. It is crazy, okay? It is crazy. And that guy is so delusional, he thinks he actually makes good stories. Bro, there's not a single person who is unironically gonna call Starfield's main quest or dialogue options good or even interesting.
All of 2024, at least that's how it's been described thus far. That new difficulty mode may not come until this summer, and the new ways to travel could be a fall release. But I think I know why that is happening. It's been pretty clear for a while now that Starfield is getting relatively small updates. If you look at what's fixed for, let's say, Baldur's Gate 3 in a month, and then compare to what's getting fixed for Starfield in a month, there is quite the discrepancy. But I think there is an
quite the discrepancy? Baldur's Gate updates are literally roughly, I think unironically 500 times larger than any update Bethesda ever has done.
Explanation for what's going on here. Starfield went through this insane all-hands-on-deck QA process. It's why things like the Fallout 4 next-gen version and even Skyrim Creations were delayed. They literally ran out of QA testers because so many were working on Starfield. As a result, Starfield released as one of the least buggy Bethesda Game Studios releases ever.
I think this is a lie, by the way. I think this is a blatant lie. I think the reason that Starfield was delayed, by the way, by 2 years. if you did not know, by Microsoft. Microsoft did not allow Starfield to be, shat out in this state. Microsoft was the only reason that this is not the buggiest game in existence. Also, the least buggy Bethesda game doesn't mean anything. It's like putting a safety helmet on your special needs kid and saying, he's good now, look at that, he's not hurting himself. Well, everything else is still better than this. The least buggy Bethesda game means that it's still an absolute janky, buggy mess of shit.
And I think Bethesda saw that a bunch of reviewers mentioned that, and were like, okay, great, now let's work on DLC and or paid mods. So as a result, it seems like the team continuing to update Starfield has been relatively small. But from this recent Wired interview, we had Todd Howard confirm that there are still 250 developers working on Starfield in some capacity. It really doesn't seem like these updates are the result of work of 250 developers, so what
I think it is. I think the people working at Bethesda are absolutely skillless clowns that cannot make anything properly. I think there is not a single person working in Bethesda who has any shred of competency or skill or talent at all. So, 250 idiots doing only this seems honestly on point for a company as bad, as terrible, as low as Bethesda. I think it does.
What's going on is a lot of people are working on DLC or even this new mod system. I made a video about this a bit ago, but one of the big issues facing Starfield right now was how unmoddable it was. Despite many public mentions of it being a modder's paradise, after I talked to many of the most prominent mod authors working on the game, it was described how many of the new systems, aka basically all of the new systems, were designed without moddability in mind, making the modding process for Starfield far more delicate and difficult. And at this point, numerous mod authors have come out raising their concerns about issues with this game and how moddable it'll be going forward. So of course, this can be fixed, but it will require quite
he's flat out lying. Mod authors are quitting Starfield because it's so bad. There are so many people who are refusing to do things because the modability for this game is literal hell. It is so bad, it is absolutely impossible to mod. This is a lie. He's just flat out lying. Juicy Boy is lying here. Mod authors are not... They're abandoning literally this game because of how bad it is.
A bit of work from Bethesda. In the past, they described mods coming in early 2023, and they did reiterate that early next year listing in their end-of-year update post, going on to describe how Starfield will be getting its own exporter and you'll have access to a new creation kit. And as another small piece of evidence that this is coming to Starfield relatively soon, they also just filed a new trademark for Bethesda Game Studios creations right at the end of 2023. This doesn't really mean a ton one way or another, but it definitely seems to be at least some indication that they have grand plans for this program applying to multiple of their games. But either way, to get mods working on the same degree as they have with past games will require a bit of work from Bethesda, so perhaps a considerable chunk of developers are working on modability, while another considerable chunk are working on the DLC. And I think those are the two big things to look out for in 2024. The continued updates to Starfield are definitely interesting, but mod support and the DLC seem to be commanding the bulk of the development efforts, and it makes sense. Mods are almost certainly going to have paid mods released at the same time. I mean, have you noticed how every single time Bethesda mentions Starfield mods, they also call them creations, aka the new naming used for this new Skyrim paid and free mod system? I don't think that's a coincidence. I think it's coming to Starfield right away. And with Starfield having such a long QA period, it definitely seems like work on this DLC could have begun quite a bit earlier this time around, so perhaps we're even playing it by this summer. So even just between Starfield getting official mods, Starfield getting a big expansion, and of course a potential Oblivion remaster or remake, Bethesda's gonna have a pretty stacked and content-rich 2024. And if each of those releases are segmented by just a couple of months, we could be eating good, having new releases every couple of months from this company. And perhaps we'll be learning more about this all very, very soon. Right around this time last year, rumors are flying of a new...
Nah, It's all trash.
New Xbox event debuting. Xbox had just skipped the Game Awards in its entirety, and shortly thereafter, in late January, the Developer Direct happened. And looking ahead,
there's the kid. It's the video with the kid.
How much Bethesda and Xbox have slated for 2023. I wouldn't be shocked to see this return in some capacity. If anything, I think a showcase of Starfield's DLC could end up fitting really nicely at a Developer Direct. But if this is going to be happening in late January to early February, I would obviously expect an Xbox event announcement in just the next couple of weeks. And even just as I was filming this video, we got a new leak about the...
By the way, this is arguably Starfield's best quest in the game. Find rando guy in cave, generic rando guy in cave, have no dialogue with him, give medkit. Win quest. Unironically, Starfield's most best designed quest because at least it's straightforward and not stupid.
2024 Developer Direct. This coming from Spanish insider Ecstasis, who has correctly predicted things in the past. They got the Redfall release date right and almost got the Baldur's Gate 3 release date correct. With a new report on Twitter, Xbox is setting the stage for a new Developer Direct event. Following in the footsteps of the successful start of 2023, at this upcoming event, expect fascinating presentations with news about titles already announced, giving players a look behind the curtain, some of the most anticipated projects, Hellblade, Towerborn, etc. But here comes the main dish. I am told that during this event, we could witness a new shadow drop or surprise release, with the game being available at the same event or even several weeks later. It may not be exactly the same as the Hi-Fi Rush case, but we would have something very similar from a game with a close release date. More info here. And in the attached image, we could see the same exact style and format as the original Developer Direct teaser. This time around, we could see 4 developers with Ninja Theory, Stoic Studios, Obsidian, and Oxide Games, with the Developer Direct itself apparently happening on January 25th. So overall, the fact that an event like this could be coming is pretty likely. I think this leak can be taken pretty seriously in that regard, but when it comes to...
I mean, does anyone even care, honestly, about that? Developer directly. What is... Fallout update. Wow, mobile game. Ooh. Interesting. Oh, the mobile game. Okay, let's see the Fallout update. Maybe it's going to be good.
But even further, we have all of this Fallout news also coming in 2023 from Bethesda. The Fall TV show is dropping on April 12th, and we just learned that the Fallout 4 Next Gen version was delayed. Perhaps these two things are completely unrelated to one another, but I'm guessing they're not. And we could see a huge batch of Fallout news with the TV show release and Next Gen version also releasing right around the same time in the first half of 2024. I fully expect Bethesda to have some kind of presence at PAX East to showcase and promote this, and we also have the Fallout 76 map expansion coming at some point this year. Fallout 76 seems to almost have this dual team development cycle going on.
Oh yeah, the Fallout 76 thing. Does anyone care? Does anyone actually care? I don't think so. I mean, it's been how long since Fallout 76 came out? 5 years, and still it's... I mean, it's better than it was, true, but it was nothing, and now it's slightly more than nothing. The average player hates 76. It's boring, it's dull, it's lame, and it's stupid.
Dual team development cycle going on, where Bethesda Game Studios works heavily on some things, like this new Atlantic City Expedition, and Double 11, one of the support studios.
Yeah, this is about right, by the way. Why can't I click on my camera? Wizards, please. Seriously, why can't I click on the camera properly? Well, anyway, you see this? You see this?
This works.
This is how the game looks. This is the only people left playing Fallout 76. It's people who are level 1,300. If you're wondering how big that is huge. This is literally hundreds of hours, if not thousands of hours spent playing this game. Level 180 is also, he has finished this game 50 times over by this point. The only people playing 76 are insane. They're blatantly just insane.
More heavily on some other things, like this upcoming map expansion and previously Nuka World on Tour. So with that in mind, if they really are using different developers for different projects on Fallout 76, it wouldn't shock me if this big map expansion releases a little bit earlier in the year and not in...
Also the fact that that guy is using power armor for some reason, that's awkward. No one uses power armor in this game. It's shit. Well, it's not shit, but it's annoying and dumb.
December like they typically drop things. But either way, there's going to be a healthy amount of content on the Fallout front to also add into the mix between all of this. And then there's just the mobile game. Back in 2018, Bethesda said they always want to be working on some kind of mobile project, just like their AAA releases. And last year, they technically did release a new mobile game. The Elder Scrolls Castles was released in beta, and honestly without any mention officially or even really any fanfare. I wouldn't be shocked if many of you have never heard of this game until right now, because yeah,
I wonder did it collapse though.
they just dropped it.
I mean, it's a mobile game, and the brutal reality of life is shit like this is actually, successful. Okay, let's move on to Elder Scrolls 6. The game that no one wants to see anymore because how bad Starfield was.
Drop. But that also leaves us with the big question of what's next. I think 2024 will be an incredibly telling time for Bethesda, and specifically the new Bethesda under Xbox. They finally got Starfield out the door, and we're kind of transitioning into the first full game being developed under Xbox's leadership. If you look at this roadmap that came from Bethesda, and even look at some of the FTC testimony that was made, it could be that the Elder Scrolls 6 is targeting a release in 2026. Now, Phil Spencer has testified to the contrary, so we kind of have competing narratives here. But if the Elder Scrolls 6 is actually coming out in 2026, could we actually start to see some more teasing or at least mentions of it in 2024? I actually think there's a decent chance we do, and one of the big reasons is Game Pass. Xbox has this interesting business model where it's not necessarily that you want a bunch of people to buy your game on release as much as you want a bunch of people to stay subscribed to Game Pass forever. That recurrent and consistent revenue is incredibly valuable. So I wouldn't be shocked if, as a result of that, we...
Yes, I have talked about this. So this is how stupid some people are. They think that the Game Pass is a win for the player, okay? I'm sorry, I'm sorry to tell you this, but Game Pass is literally a huge loss for the player. It gives the player nothing, okay? It gives nothing. The average player probably is installing and playing less than 2 games from the Game Pass per year, okay? Now, if you're installing and playing 20 games or 10 games with Game Pass every single year without exception, yeah, then I guess it's kind of value for you. But remember, you're probably one out of at least 100,000. So, that's not a lot. That's not a lot. But the average person is losing money on the Game Pass. Because the because this is how these things work. You subscribe to them, and then you forget to unsubscribe to them because it's like, hey, it's only $10, and if I decide to install something, I'm saving like $50 or something. But again, if the Game Pass costs, $10 to $20 per month, someone gave me the actual number, it was more than 10 but less than 20, if I remember correctly, you essentially need to play 4 full AAA release games to get your money's worth from Xbox Game Pass. The average person probably plays less than 2. It is what it is. It is what it is. So yeah, Game Pass is obviously a complete scam. If Game Pass was actually good for the consumer and bad for Xbox, it would not exist, obviously. But it does. And Xbox loves it because I bet the average statistics are that, between Americans buying Netflix subscriptions, Hulu subscriptions, McDonald's subscriptions, iPhone subscriptions, they have this list of 100 things that they will obviously forget to cancel Game Pass ever. So it is what it is.
We start to see Bethesda talk about some of their upcoming games even a bit earlier. That's not to say that I think we're getting a new Elder Scrolls 6 trailer this year, but instead I wouldn't be shocked if at a lot of these other interviews that are going on around some of their other releases, it is actually talked about and mentioned. I wouldn't be shocked to hear Todd Howard give us a couple of one-liners about what's going on with the Elder Scrolls 6 and basically just status updates on the project. But even beyond just Bethesda game studios, 2024 has the potential to be a giant year for the company of Bethesda overall.
It's gonna fail. Again, I put absolutely no merit in Bethesda ever being able to actually do anything properly. I mean, they're long gone. They're like Ubisoft. They're like Blizzard. The best thing that Blizzard has done is just released a game that they did 20 years ago, World of Warcraft Classic, and sounds pretty good, honestly. But that's it. Everything else they do is a failure. Overwatch, remasters, retail World of Warcraft. Dying games just throwing a fit. It is what it is. Anyway, this was Quizzer Said. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and already. And that was our boy Juicy Head. What a time to be a time. Anyway, bye bye.